Coming up on today's show, Cavs Bucks, Donovan Mitchell's back, but bad shooting in the third and bad shooting overall cost the Cavs. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
I'm Chris Manning. We have a special guest today, Jackson Flickinger. You can find him at Right on Euclid. You can hear him or see him on the Junkyard Dog podcast with Tony Pesta, who's going to be on the show next week as well. You may be wondering, is Jackson glitching? Is something wrong? He is in a Star Wars movie that was shot in 1970, so if you see some camera stuff, that he's just paying homage to George Lucas. Jackson, my friend, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And the first Star Wars was released in 1977, Chris. I expect more from you.
Did I say like
you said like 1970 in the 70s. I'm just telling you 77.
Okay, that's fair.
Come
that's
on,
fair.
everyone. Shot in like 75, really.
Yeah.
So, but
yeah, that's right. Should also know Jackson, biggest Sam Merrill defender I know on the internet and in real life. I should have called you Big Dog in homage to the Tiger Woods meme going around because you're a big Tiger Woods guy. What's up, Big Dog? And the world's big Isaac Okoro hater, which means we're mortal enemies, and that's fine. But you know, we're bringing it together. We're peacing our time, is what I would say.
I just want to know who's number 2 on like the Sam Merrill biggest fan list, and like what's the distance between me and him?
It's you and Mitt Romney, and you could just like shoot Mitt Romney a DM and like find out. Is what I would say. You know. Okay, like, Willard, do you have a binder full of Sam Merrill stats to talk about? And you could go from there.
One of the things that's kind of weird is that like all these Utah State people are now showing up in my like 4 U tab just because they keep liking my stuff. So I need to figure out how to navigate this whole Twitter thing. But we'll take that offline.
No one knows how to use Twitter. That's X, whatever it's called. All right, Cavs Bucks. Cavs lose 119 to 111 in Donovan Mitchell's return. He has 34. Jarrett Allen has 30 and is again playing awesome. We're going to talk about him in segment 3. This game, Jackson, as you know, you were there. I'm at home battling some illness, like Donovan Mitchell. They lose the third quarter 40-21. The Bucks shot 65.2% in the field in that quarter. The Cavs at 41.7% and 12.5% from 3 in that quarter. Nice third quarter comeback, all of that. But Cleveland loses, and to me, it's about where things went off the rails in the third quarter. What did the Bucks do? What did the Cavs not do, in your opinion, that caused the discrepancy in that game?
So I think this was a really good game by the Cavs, and it just kind of comes down to if you take a lot of threes and you miss all of them, like things like this are going to happen where you have a quarter where you lose 40-21. It's just really hard to play defense when you keep missing threes like that and runouts happen. And it's like, if they make a couple more threes, if some of them just fall, I think it just changes the whole complexion of this game. Like they dominated the first quarter and they were 1 for 9 from 3, I believe, in that first quarter. But it's really hard to keep that going when you're shooting that many threes.
The Bucks are this team where I think they provide some obviously issues for the Cavs, and they're for the most part very good. That third quarter just felt a little bit like you have to find ways to keep up with Damian Lillard and Giannis at times, and Cleveland maybe just doesn't have the horses for that in this current health situation. Mitchell, like, they didn't shoot well as a team in that quarter, but it wasn't Mitchell or Allen in this game that was like the issue, right? Like Mitchell plays nearly 10 minutes of the quarter. He's 5 of 7, 11 points. Allen has 8 on 4 or 5 shooting. But it's Strus is 0-4, pretty bad Strus game amid a cold run from him. Okoro's only 1 of 2, Levert's 0 of 2, Merrill's 0 of 2, Niang's 0 of 2, and it goes on. It felt like to me in that quarter, you don't have the horsepower to keep up with those two guys when they get rolling. And they weren't even rolling in this like insane way by any stretch of the imagination, right? It's like, okay, Giannis is 6 of 7, he's 2-2 from the line. Dame's 4 of 7, but Dame gets to the line 5 times, and they're 7 of 7 from the line. The Cavs are 0-2 from the line in that quarter. It just felt like this accumulates. And right now, and I think even at their best, there's still to me some questions, Jackson, about like how what the horsepower of this Cavs offense is. Like, how fast can they go? Can they be a team that can get into shootouts and win? And right now, they kind of have to play this certain way with the guys they have, and it's looked a certain way, and the offense has largely been efficient. But in these moments, there's that gear that, even with Mitchell back, I think it's just hard for them to get to. And even with a great fourth quarter comeback and the toughness, it's just hard for them to keep up, I think, ultimately. You're shaking your head. Is this unfair?
I mean, I think it's, when you look at that third quarter, you listed off the guys that, played in that third quarter that didn't do anything that were besides Mitchell and Allen. Those are all mostly 3-point shooters, or guys who mostly take their shots from beyond the arc. And it's like,
yeah,
they're there to take threes and they're there to make threes. They just weren't making them. And it's not like, the guys that were taking them are guys that you wouldn't expect to make threes. You had missed threes from, Strus in this quarter was 0 for 2, Merrill 0 for 2, Niang 0 for 2. Like, you don't expect them to go you don't expect those three to combine to go 0 for 6 very often. And I think this is where we could talk about kind of how some of the Cavs depth pieces can only score in one way, or at least they're primarily good at scoring in one way. We saw that Craig Porter Jr. really didn't, he played less than 2 minutes in that third quarter, and he's a guy who gets downhill, attacks the basket. They needed another guy like that on a night where it just wasn't falling from three. So maybe you could say JB should have put in Craig Porter Jr. earlier, but I don't think there's a problem with trying to shoot your way out of it when this team kind of shot their way back into a game that they had no business winning on Wednesday and kind of did the same thing on Monday against the Bulls. So it's like, this is how the team's going to win when you're down Garland and Mobley. So when they lose in that way, I'm not going to be too concerned. Like, yes, if they were in a playoff series with the Bucks and this was their team, then it's like, yeah, they only have one way to play and that's an issue. But I think this is a versatile team if they can actually get completely together when all the pieces are back. And that's a much broader question and something that they haven't shown that they can do.
Yeah, and I think you sold me on this. I think you're more right than I am here. I think that you can take that. You can take that to your grave. I might never say.
I've never actually heard you say that before. So this is going back to our Larry Nance conversations. Larry Nance Jr. conversations. You never said that.
Yeah, look, we're mending fences here. We're bringing more peace. The thing that I think that ultimately this is getting at, that I think where this team is at, and it goes back to the moves they made, and I think you've hit on this. It's like they brought in guys who are not exactly one note, but they're kind of one note. Like Niang is certainly, I think, one note. Strus really isn't, but his utility oftentimes is to take threes, and like they do very active sets to get him looks. This feels like, in some ways, like an evolution that I actually support in terms of how they're shooting right now amid all these injuries, because the offense had to get better to get evolved from last year. They just needed another gear. And there certainly just is some variance. And I would suspect that JB Bickerstaff probably, like, deep in his soul is like, I would like us not to take 43 threes and like maybe just like take 35 and like somewhat dial it up. But this is like the extreme version of that. And you kind of just have to play like this right now, I think, ultimately, win or lose, and they've more won than not in this stretch, you probably just have to play like this right now. And I think certainly with Mitchell back, that's how you should play if Mitchell is your lead creator. He's not a great creator for others, but he is a guy that if you design sets and you play a certain way and play with tempo, you can get guys clean looks based on how Mitchell attacks and the reads he is super capable of making. I think that's where we've ended up here more than anything else, is just you kind of have to play this way right now, and I guess we'll see what carries over and what doesn't when Garland's back from his jaw. More than Mobley, frankly.
Right. I do think there's an interesting conversation to be had with Donovan Mitchell, but especially as like a playmaker, I think we saw some good things today, and we've seen good things during the stretch. Especially like 4 of his 9 assists went to Jarrett Allen, which I think he's showing a lot more comfort with getting Jarrett involved and kind of running that pick and roll. And that's something that he has not been particularly strong at, especially last season. So I think there's a lot of positives there, but kind of more on the 3-point front. They've taken the highest percentage of threes in the past 6 games. Not I'm counting today. The highest percentage of threes, 45.6% of their shot attempts in their previous 6 games have come from beyond the arc. That's insane. So that's something that I don't think you want to constantly live that high, but that's also steps in the right direction. And I think that we saw kind of the benefits of that today, where the Cavs, they made 82.1% of their shots at the rim today. And it's like that, a lot of that has to do with how spaced out they had the Bucks. So even though they made 6 threes, when you shoot 43 of them, people are going to cover you. It's the Marcus Smart effect. But I mean, the Cavs have better shooters. But, so there's a lot of benefits that shooting that many threes has overall. And we saw that today. It's just, if they made 9 of 43 from 3, we're probably talking about I'm talking about this game very differently.
Yeah, and also just maybe take more closer number of free throws that the Bucks did. Ultimately,
that's that's when you have 3 guys on the team right now that can attack the basket comfortably, and this is where I think when we talk about where the Cavs have issues, they have very few guys who can do all 3 of pass, dribble, and shoot. They have guys who can pass, they have guys who can dribble, and they have guys who can shoot, but they have not many who can do all 3. And that's where, when you don't have guys who can do that, you're not going to get to the free throw line. You can complain about officiating all you want and say, oh, they shot 28 free throws and we only shot 9. That's bad officiating. It's like, no, they have guys who can dribble, get to the basket. The Cavs have 1. 2, really, if you count Greg Porter Jr. So it's like
1.5.
1.5, depending on how you feel about Karis LeVert, but he doesn't really try to get contact.
2.5. Yeah.
When he feels like it. Today he wasn't feeling like it with 0 free throws. But that's where, if you want to poke holes in the Cavs, that's where it's like, they don't really have a lot of versatile guys. They have a lot of specialists to go around. There are 4 stars who are also specialists. So kind of an issue.
Coming up next, let's get into game awards. That's MVP, stat of the night, and play of the night. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors, and our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week. One name I like on Josh's list is Hartenstein, the former Cav, the current Knick. Mitchell Robinson, he writes, is out for the season, it appears, and Isaiah Hartenstein is the clear add if he's available. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. If you have a personal experience with eBay, you should let us know. We'll share it on the show. But I got to tell you, eBay Motors for me is great. I have my Ford Bronco that I bought this year. I'm going to drive that car as long as I possibly can. Hopefully no highway chases. And keep it up to date with all the parts that I can need. And eBay Motors has them all. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply. Let's get into game awards. Jackson Flickinger, who's your MVP?
Can we pause for a second? So I want to go with Donovan Mitchell just because you really saw.
I muted.
I think,
No. I just muted you for that ad.
It turns
Because
out
I
like
wanted,
34 points and 10
yeah,
assists.
you're good. You're good.
9 assists are like really good.
No, you're good. No.
And just
No.
2 turnovers.
You're
I think we
you're being
really
very
saw
conscientious, and that's great. But you're good. I just muted
better
you.
Game than maybe we would have expected to see from him after getting sick. After the game, he was coughing throughout his post-game press conference. So all the people, the shoulder conspiracy people, that's a tough look for them. Or Donovan's a really good actor.
Is that a thing? Is that a thing? The shoulder. I'm just like offline, right? A lot of the time, honestly. So like, is that a thing? Is that something people are doing?
Yes, that is. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it's definitely something that they were doing. So yeah, but that's a tough look for them. But I think that's the thing about conspiracies. Anything's a win if you really want it to be. So good luck to those guys. But really, I think we saw one of the things that I wanted to see with Garland out is I wanted to see Mitchell kind of run the team more as more of a playmaker, because when you look at Mitchell, what's holding him back from taking the step is really his playmaking. I think he can be a good passer. He's just not a willing passer, and I think a lot of times he drives with the idea of, okay, how can I score in this way? And that works out very well in the regular season, but you can run into problems like we saw last year in the playoffs. So this is a time where I really want to see him grow, and I think we've seen some improvements there, and I think today was another good example of that. As I said, the 4 assists to Jarrett Allen, that's a good sign, because him driving and kicking the 3-point shooters, as we mentioned, is always good. You like that, but that's the easy pass for him to make. It's a lot easier for someone like Mitchell to really, see the help defender coming when they're coming from the 3-point line, and for him to just kind of whip it out there. That's what we saw with the Jazz. That's kind of what Snyder wanted him to do. But getting the bigs involved, that's something that is a skill that he doesn't naturally have. So seeing him kind of exercise that more today, I think is really good.
Yeah, he's a good creator, but like in the sense that he knows how to make the reads that present themselves and feed bigs when he wants to. It's like the layers sometimes I think are what holds him back from being different than like the elite guys kind of at his spot or that are guards. All right, let's go for mine. It's Jarrett Allen. We're going to talk about him in detail in segment 3, but again, 30 points. He had 12 boards, 6 assists. He's blocking shots. He's kind of everywhere, and he's playing 40 minutes, and the Cavs are in a rut over this last stretch without him. So, to me, I just have become just very, very impressed with him. All right, my stat of the night, the Cavs took 20 more shots than the Bucks and lost. That's just like kind of 23 more shots to be exact. That's kind of hard to do, to just get that much more volume and still lose. It just speaks to how off of a shooting that they had, particularly from 3. You mentioned their shooting numbers at the rim. Just wasn't enough ultimately to overcome the math of 3-pointers. Jackson, what's your stat? I know it's adjacent to this.
So the Bucks outscored them by 18 from the 3-point line by making 6 more threes, and the Bucks had 12 fewer attempts, which is not a winning formula if you're, if you want to ever win a basketball game in the NBA. You can't shoot that many more threes and then get outscored by that much from 3. So that's my stat of the night.
All right, play of the night. We'll do these quickly. For me, just Isaac Okoro drove past Giannis and scored in the second half of this game. There's other ones that are more exciting. Donovan Mitchell did some cool stuff, whatever. Isaac Okoro just continues, I think, to do real-life adult NBA wing stuff, and I mostly also wanted to just get a reaction out of Jackson, if I'm being honest. So for me, I just quite enjoyed what he was doing, what he did in this game, and as his physicality and his part in the comeback here. So Isaac Okoro, congratulations. You scored on one of the best players alive with a drive, and I did know you had that in you, sir. What's your play, Jackson?
I, too, didn't know he had it in him, but I really like how, of his 3 made field goals, you had to really choose between one of them. So that's like choosing your favorite child if you had a child.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't really know, but that's what they say. So
same.
Congratulations to you for being able to choose between those 3. My play of the night is Craig Porter Jr.'s 3 with 50 seconds left. Just Craig Porter Jr. is not somebody who is comfortable shooting threes, and it was a night where the Cavs missed, about 43s. So him kind of having the confidence in himself to take that three and make that three in that moment to cut it to 4. Like the Cavs were still in that game if they get a stop and can actually, go down and get another 3. So that's what you want to see from Craig Porter Jr. We talked a little bit about, him not playing much in the third quarter. And I think part of that reason is because he is not somebody who can shoot to 3 or not somebody who's comfortable shooting to 3. And him doing that is just really, it's really important for his development, and just another good late minute performance from Craig Porter Jr. He was not the reason why they lost today.
Just yes or no before we go to break, Jackson. Is Craig Porter Jr. good enough already where you don't think the Cavs need to go trade for or sign or find a veteran point guard to replace Ricky Rubio? Like, is he just good enough already?
I don't know if he's good enough already, but I think for this team, it makes more sense to have a shorter rotation with Karis LeVert as kind of the de facto backup point guard.
Yeah.
So I would say yes for this team, but if you were to say in a vacuum, your backup point guard has to play, I would say you would maybe like to have somebody a little more polished.
The only thing I would say to that is that I just do think that if they are going to make a trade at the deadline and they don't have a ton of assets really, I would rather spend it on like some kind of another wing option than I would a backup point guard.
I would go a 4-5. You just got to get rid of those. You got to have somebody besides George Niang who can play those minutes.
Yeah.
And that's I know that when Mobley comes back, Dean Wade could replace Niang in the rotation, but I still would like somebody else, because we know how Wade can sometimes, when he's not feeling it, you kind of don't see him. Like today, did Dean Wade play today? Like, I know he did, but it didn't really feel like it.
That'd be a good Twitter account, honestly. Did Dean Wade play today? Did Dean Wade take like more than one shot in a game? I mean, he took 3, but it didn't feel like he took.
Right. Like he played 17 minutes, and I'm thinking it's like, well, do I remember his 17 minutes? And it's like, not really. So that's where, and and George Niang, you remember his 15 minutes. So, and that's not always for the right reason. So it's like, that's a position where I think they desperately need help. So like the backup point guard, it would be great, but I don't think it's like, I don't think it's going to break this team. Whereas you can convince me that this could break the team, but
yeah, that's fair. All right, come back. Let's talk about Jarrett Allen. Let's talk about Evan Mobley, how they work together amid what Jarrett Allen's doing right now. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime, which is the best way to buy tickets for your next big event. You shouldn't have to worry about buying tickets when you want to go to something. Gametime is how you don't have to worry. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love the last-minute deals. I built an entire ticket buying experience for Aces Liberty in New York this past summer around using Gametime. And guess what? I saved myself, my uncle, 2 of my friends. I saved us a bunch of money. Wouldn't have happened without Gametime. Gametime also means you'll get the best price. They have the Gametime guarantee, which means if you find a ticket somewhere else in the same section in a row for less, you get 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So, Jackson, Jarrett Allen has been, I think, not revelation is maybe strong, but he has been quite good over this run. And I think the way he's been good is really interesting because you're seeing him run DHOs, you're seeing him rack up assists, you're seeing him take mid-range jumpers at times, you're seeing him get to the rim. This is all the stuff that if you go back to when the Cavs got him in the first place, that Kobe Altman talked about wanting him to do. The things they talked about wanting him to add to his game to help him evolve. There are things he didn't even really do in his All-Star season. Really. There weren't things. This isn't stuff he did then. It also happens to be, I think, a lot of the stuff that Evan Mobley does it when he's playing well on offense. I still think there's a world where you really, like, I think any team ultimately that's trying to get to the high end is going to have some overlap, have things that are imperfect. I think that's just unavoidable. But I am just like looking at Jarrett Allen right now a little bit and squinting and wondering, how do I keep some of this when Evan Mobley is back? And how do I keep some of this momentum and energy and skill he's playing with up when he's coming back? Like, where are you at with how Jarrett's playing and what it's going to mean when Mobley does come back, whenever that's going to be?
I think you have to be really impressed with how he played, just because I don't think last season was a great season for him. I thought he was fine, but I didn't think he was nearly as good as he could have been. And I felt like this season was a lot of the same until Evan Mobley went down. So from that standpoint, it's really encouraging to see what he can do, that he can be just an absolute monster. Like today, he was, forced to really guard Giannis at times, and was also one of the best offensive players on the team, just attacking Brook Lopez on repeat, and that's something that you just really want to see. And when you hear Jarrett Allen talk about it, like how well he's playing, he talks about being more like aggressive. And he needs to be that way, but it's like, I think it's not because when he's playing with Evan Mobley, he's just like, oh, like, I don't need to play basketball anymore because somebody else good is out here. I think it's just when you have somebody who does the exact same thing that you do, it's hard to aggressively find your spots. And I think the redundancy of both of them is just really coming through in these moments. So is there a world where both of them can work? I'm more skeptical about that, just because I think it's just, I'm not somebody who says, who's going to pull up the one big four, non-big lineup data and then base my personality off of that. I'm not like that, but I do think there is something to the overlap that these two guys have that makes it really hard for both of them to be the best versions of themselves when they have to be playing with each other.
The player I've been thinking about in relation to Mobley a lot this year, because I think he might just win Rookie of the Year over Victor Wembanyama, is Chet Holmgren. And then I was watching after Cavs Bucks ended, I flipped on Thunder Nuggets. And Chet had a play that I've never... He did something with the ball in his hands on the perimeter and drove and scored that I just like have... You don't see Evan Mobley do that often. And when he does, it's like kind of an unexpected surprise. And Chet, it just looks like natural and smooth. And the Thunder don't really have like another traditional center. They're not playing the same way the Cavs are. But I just think if Mobley had a little more of that, or he could shoot corner threes and just had a little more of like an easy button on offense for himself, or just a little more layer, like this would just be like a cleaner fit. Like it just would. And it's not totally fair to Mobley, I would say too, to just say like you have to do this to accommodate this other guy, because he's been thrust into a team that wants to win right away earlier than a lot of other guys in position one. I do think there's some developmental cost to that. I would say we're going to find out at some point, like if he can supersede it. But it is the reality that if Mobley, I think, had just a little more on offense, this would just like look cleaner. Like it just would work better.
Yeah, I really like how, first off, Chet and Evan have very different games, but I do think one of the things that I really like about OKC is that they saw somebody who it would have been very easy to say, okay, we need to get a big traditional center, a Jonas Valanciunas type of guy who is just a center, who you just throw out there with him just to kind of keep Chet from the beating that guys at center take. But no, they said, hey, we're going to take the training wheels off. We know that you are a center. For us to be good, you will have to be a center, and we're going to make you just adapt. And he has. And I know that Mobley plays a bunch with the second unit as the center, but it's different when you start a game as a center and you end a game as a center, and you are the center on the team. And that's not what Evan Mobley is. And I wonder if he would be better served long term if he was just thrown into that position and they said, hey, you got to figure this out. At the same time, this team wouldn't be as good, or at least definitely not the last 2 years, if they just did that. So that's like the balance that they have to strike, because what makes them so special is no other team has multiple guys who can defend on the perimeter and protect the paint in the way that Allen and Mobley can. That's why they were so good last year. That's why they had one of the best net ratings. That's why they had one of the best defenses. That's why they were a great defense against the Knicks in the playoffs, even though they were doing some nonsensical things that led to a million offensive rebounds. But the offense is like, yeah, I think Evan Mobley can't really do those things when Jarrett Allen is in the dunker spot. And then you also throw in somebody like Isaac Okoro, who he played a lot of minutes with last year with Allen, who's also kind of has the profile of a center. So it's like you put those limitations on him, which make the team good, but because as much as I joke about Isaac Okoro, he actually is very helpful and was very helpful last year. So
38% from three right now, just for the record. Okay,
that's when we talk about Isaac Okoro, don't bring up his raw 3-point shooting percentage. We gotta expand the conversation, but that's not what we're going to do today. At least I'm willing to talk about it today, but that's
Jackson. Here's the thing: I will bring you back, and we will do an Isaac Okoro episode where you just tell me I'm an idiot for loving Isaac Okoro, and I'll be like, Deanne Waiters hurt me. You don't understand.
You're right. I don't. So, because he definitely didn't hurt me. So,
yeah.
But yeah. So that's where I wonder if, like, Evan Mobley would be better served if they just took the training wheels off. But that's also, the Cavs aren't really in a position for them to do that because, hey, you traded for you traded for Donovan Mitchell. You have to convince Donovan Mitchell to re-sign here.
Even just trading for Mitchell means like no trading wheels for you, Evan Mobley. Like it's over. Like we gave up Lauri Markkanen, all these picks. Like you can't have training wheels and slow things down when you make that trade. You just it's over at that point.
Well, but also that's what's put the training wheels on Evan Mobley from the center position standpoint.
Yeah,
because
it's like put training. It's like said we have to win, so you don't get training wheels, but also we're not going to let you make mistakes, so therefore there are training wheels on you. It's like it's paradoxical. It's like these two things like smacking against each other with him.
One of the things that I always keep coming back to is why is Jarrett Allen on the Cavs? It's because teams don't value traditional centers. The Rockets would have rather had a late first-round pick than Jarrett Allen, who they rightfully viewed as a traditional center. So guys like him aren't, even though he's really, really good, and I think he's worth more than a late first if the Cavs were to trade him tomorrow. But he doesn't have the value his skills sort of demand, if that makes sense. Just because he needs to be in the right position to succeed. Like not every team needs a Jarrett Allen. So that's why he's here. And you kind of look at like Darius Garland. Why is Darius Garland here? Well, because he fell, because there were questions about him because he's a smaller guard and stuff like that. So it's just a lot of these guys are in the spots that they're in because they're imperfect, but actually still really good. And, when you keep playing the string out, you're still going to have those questions that allow those players to fall into your lap, even though they're really good.
It's a complicated question. This roster question will not go away, I think, anytime soon, and how the Cavs do with it.
And it's
going to be really interesting.
And like the thing is, you can have the very same conversation with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Can go back to that, and I think kind of that Mavericks game when they
people had it with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland before we even got to Mitchell and Garland. Like we've had this conversation in like 80 different ways,
Right, but like the Colin Sexton and Darius Garland one, in hindsight, was a stupid conversation. So this is a very not stupid conversation because they're both Darius hasn't played good this year, but Donovan Mitchell, you can say he's one of the best shooting guards in the league, top 3. Darius Garland.
He's 3. I would say he's top 3, but he's 3.
Which is very good. You'd sign up
which
for
is
that.
very good, but it's like, yeah, for sure.
I mean,
I'm just saying, he's probably still 3.
I mean, we could revisit the Book conversation. In the playoffs, Book was really good this year.
What did Donovan Mitchell just do in the playoffs?
What did Donovan Mitchell do in the playoffs in 2019 and 2020? And
it's hard.
So is it context? There's a lot of context because I think Devin Booker's also an imperfect player. I think he's a much better passer. So I think that kind of gives him a little more leeway. But I think Donovan Mitchell, like, if I need this person to shoot and score, I would probably rather have Donovan Mitchell. So
let me ask you one last question before we go. I just want to ask you one last thing about Jarrett. Is he better at any of these offensive characteristics than Evan is? Like, I think Evan has like better passing vision, but I think Jarrett's like a better screener. I think Jarrett, as a result, like might be kind of allow for a little more oomph on some DHOs and some of that downhill action. Jarrett just like moves a little snappier. Sometimes Evan can be move a little slow and take his time to get into stuff. But like Evan, I think, is the better passer with better touch, with better vision. But there's something just a little more snappy about Jarrett. But do you think Jarrett's like actually ahead of Evan in any of these skills based on what we've seen?
I do. I mean, I think he's a better rim finisher. He's a better lob threat. And when you look for he provides vertical spacing in a way that Evan doesn't. And vertical spacing on a team that has, not really right now, but at times has lacked spacing, you really see how important that is. And I think he is a better mid-range shooter. Like, we saw that. Like, he is getting more comfortable with that, and you feel pretty comfortable when he's taking that shot at the free throw line. I don't feel that same way with Evan Mobley, even though it looks a lot better than the actual result. So yeah, I think Jarrett at this point, I think he fits into a lot more offenses cleaner than Evan Mobley does in a vacuum. Evan Mobley is a better ball handler, but he still needs to really improve on that if he wants to kind of take the next step. I think that's kind of, if I'm looking for one area for Evan Mobley to improve, obviously it's a shot, but he hasn't shown that he wants to improve there. But if he just had a tighter handle, I think that's where you're going to see the next evolution for him. But if we're just talking about traditional, rim running center stuff, Jarrett Allen's the better traditional rim running center from that standpoint.
We're going to end there. Jackson, you're going to come back. I'm telling you now, we're going to do an Okoro episode, I guess. I worked myself into a shoot. And we're going to do some kind of Evan Mobley discourse episode. I think we have to do this. It's been good to have you back on. It's been a while. It's good to chat with you. I hope your X-Wing doesn't crash in space. That would be cool.
Thank you. Can we work in some Andre Drummond and Larry Nance Jr. 2-man game talk? Because that's what we talked about the last time, and I have more thoughts. My thoughts. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry I did that to you. I just want to apologize for that. That's a war crime in basketball podcasting, if I'm being honest. Well, I thought it was good. My biggest thing is why didn't the Jarrett Allen and Larry Nance Jr. lineups work? That was everything can be pointed back to that. That was really the start of this conversation.
I had someone point out to me recently too that in 20 years we're gonna be on whatever social media platform we're using then. God forbid. That right. And someone's gonna. I ask myself that every day if I'm being honest. And someone's going to be some kid who's 16 is going to make a video about how Andre Drummond was in fact underrated. And I'm just going to I'm going to walk into Lake Erie at that point. It's over for me. They're going to look at the raw numbers and be like, this guy should have made 10 All-Star games. I'm going to be like, you weren't there. You don't know. That's when I'm going to know that it's really over. I'm already washed, but that's going to be like it's super over.
What if Andre Drummond had hops? Like, if he could get above the rim, he'd be so good. Like that. Like when you don't watch Andre Drummond every day, you're like, oh yeah, he's like a rim running center. But no, he finishes below the basket all the time. He's like doing scoop layups. Like that's why he gets 75 rebounds, because he keeps grabbing his scoop layups. So if he could finish above the rim, he would have been really good. And I think that's when you look at him, you think he can. So that's why you think, oh, he's better than people thought. But no. Anyways, Chris, why are we talking about this?
Because this is a Saturday, December 30th, Locked On Cavs, last episode of the year. Going out on a heater. I'm Chris Manning. That's been Jackson Flickinger. Check him out at Right Down Euclid. Listen to him and Tony Pesta, who will be on the show next week on the Junkyard Dog Pod. Read his work, subscribe to his show. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always. We'll talk to y'all in 2024 after Cavs Raptors, the first game of the year.